Hey everyone, welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and here we are on December the 23rd. Now, if you are in America and you celebrate Christmas, then the chances are that you are feeling a lot of pressure today. I remember back in the day when I used to, be very engaged in the, gift giving part of Christmas, and I used to really go very, very heavy into it. I mean, I used to buy tons of gifts, and I always remember that the 23rd and 24th were just absolute scatter-minded, just calling and, rushing from one store to another and just, hoping praying that things weren't sold out and, doing the best that I could to get the gifts that I told everyone or I told myself I was going to get everyone or what people told me that they wanted or what have you. And, I get it. If that's where you're at right now, I totally feel where you're at, and I feel the tension that you're feeling and the stress that you're going through, the stress that your body is going through right now, is not very much what Christmas is supposed to be, right? And of course, I get it. There's obligations, especially when it comes to children and it comes to, we have this sense, especially as parents, that, if we don't make our kids really happy on Christmas, then we're somehow failing them, right? And maybe we're thinking back to when we were kids and we have this memory of Christmas mornings and just getting everything that we ever wanted. And, or maybe you have a memory that you didn't get everything that you wanted. Maybe you have the memory that you hardly got anything and you want so badly to give your children something more than what you had, right? And wherever in that spectrum you are, you fall, a lot of the pressure that we put on ourselves, it's very important to understand that a lot of this pressure we put on ourselves has to do with what happened when we were children, and even what happened when our parents were children and our grandparents were children, because that's the way that these kind of concepts and understandings and expectations are passed along from generation to generation to generation, right? And they live within our nervous system, right? And that's why there is that lineage, right? If you go back from generation to generation to generation, there's a memory that exists in our nervous system that dictates to us how we're going to feel about something. Now, of course, this is changeable, and of course every generation is a little different, right? But there's some overlying things that are there, right? And so it's a really important aspect, it's a really important time at this time to take a look at that, right? And to spend a little time, take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, and just sit and ponder. It might not even take you 5 or 10 minutes. It might take you 30 seconds to sit and ponder, where the pressure that you're feeling is really coming from, right? And of course, again, I'm not here suggesting that we shouldn't buy gifts for our children. Being a kid on Christmas, that's what it's all about, right? You come down in the morning and there's all these, brightly shiny wrapped boxes under this big shiny glistening lit up tree. I mean, it's a magical moment, and of course we don't want to deprive our children of that, right? But there's an important kind of distinction between the value of what is in those boxes, right, and the memories that your children are really going to feel. Right? Remember, like I said a few minutes ago, you might have a memory where you walked out in the morning and there was an abundance of presents, right? It was just like crazy, like so many presents. Or you might have that memory of there being very, very little under the Christmas tree, right? And so what feelings are associated with that is what is motivating you now, and what might be causing a lot of the stress that you're feeling now. And that was the case with me, right? Like I always, I grew up, I was very, very fortunate when I was young. My parents had extra money, and so we were always, it wasn't, over the top kind of thing. I mean, we didn't get stuff that was like completely like crazy, but we did get stuff, right? And we got an abundance of things, right? And so my memory of that time was the excitement of the newness of the games and stuff, right? And so it's easy for me to get wrapped up in that, to think like, well, that's what a successful Christmas is all about, right? Having this abundance of gifts, right? But then when I look at, what was really going on then, outside of the gifts, maybe there wasn't a lot of happiness. Maybe there was a lot of, kind of, there were other things that were going on that weren't, all as happy as I think they were, right? And that's the thing, like, you don't have really an accurate memory of that. You just have the memory that exists within your nervous system, right? And so that's what makes you feel a certain thing, right? So when you think about, okay, how many gifts do I have to buy? You have a feeling in your body, right, that is coming from that nervous system, right? So your nervous system is remembering those imprinted emotional memories from when you were a child, which again, the memories that you received were as a result of what your parents had in their nervous system from when they were children, and back and back and back and back as far as you want to go, right? And this, of course, applies not just to Christmas, but Christmas is a really big deal for a lot of people, and it's it's been a big deal for generations, and so it's a very sort of obvious time to look at this sort of thing, right? But the key is that remember, it's that feeling that you have as a child, right? So it's not, because we know, right, that and if you think about it for a little while, you'll probably remember that, that cool little electronic toy that you opened on Christmas Day, right? It was cool and it was exciting and it brought you a lot of happiness, but only for what? A few weeks, a couple of months maybe. Even that brand new bicycle, right? After a certain amount of time, it's sitting in the garage, it's getting a little dusty. You still ride it, sure, but it's not that special anymore. It's a means to an end. It's the way to get around and stuff like that. But it's not that, oh my gosh, my new bicycle, you want to sleep with it on that first night, right? And so that's the way, material belongings work, right? Like anything, right? When we get something that's new, right, there's a certain excitement, and that excitement is also part of what's happening in our nervous system, right? But again, that excitement is short-lived, right? We talk a lot about impermanence here in this podcast, right? And on this YouTube channel. And so the impermanence of this happiness that you receive from this exciting new gift that you get, right? The impermanence of that is quite high, meaning that's quite a short life of happiness. Like, it's gonna go away really quickly, relatively so, right? And so therefore, it's kind of, while we're pushing ourselves and making ourselves so stressed out to get everything and make everything perfect, and think that if it's not perfect, if my kids don't get all these things that they put on their list, then somehow I have failed, right? Like somehow I am not as good as a parent as I wanted to be, or as I promised myself to be, or something like that, right? That stress that we're feeling from that, right? And this is something we talk about here a lot, right? So, that stress that you're feeling, right, and the stress of buying the presents and kind of pushing forward and again, rushing from store to store, probably spending more money than you really have. That's a very common thing. I talked about that yesterday. And I also talk about the fact that, there's been surveys done over the last, couple of years that show that 53% of people in America here, feel enormous stress around the holidays, and most of them are feeling stressed due to finance, right? And these are even people who budgeted for Christmas, right? They still feel the stress, right? And of course, this is not all our fault, right? Like, I was walking around the stores yesterday buying what we consider a very modest Christmas list for our kids, but the pressure, the posters, the price discounts, just the way the stores are laid out. I mean, it's like you can't help it, right? Like, you literally can't help it. Okay, I'll just throw this little plush toy in my cart because it's only $5.99. But before you know it, you've got all these little $5.99 things in your cart, and it's adding up to like, $60 or, maybe even $100 or something like that, right? And that's how people wind up going into debt and feeling a lot of that financial stress. Finance is one of the biggest stressors in our society, right? And it's when you're walking out of that store and you're justifying with your emotions that, okay, but this is what my kids need, right? But you're feeling that stress in your body, right? Because you're worried that maybe you spent too much, or maybe maybe you weren't able to get that one thing, like the thing that always comes to my mind, I'm gonna date myself here, is the Cabbage Patch Kids, right? Like when I was a kid, my young sisters wanted the Cabbage Patch dolls, right? And these dolls were like, people were literally fighting each other in toy stores to like literally fist fights over these dolls, and it was like that. Like so if you weren't able to get that Cabbage Patch doll, right, now what are you doing? You're making up for it by just an abundance of other stuff, right? But the thing is, right, your child only asked for the Cabbage Patch doll because she saw, or he saw, that was the new thing and everybody else wanted it. So it's all just this phony demand that's created through advertising and marketing, right? But we all buy into it, right? Because we are pretty defenseless to it. It's a very, very powerful force in our lives, right? And in the stores and on TV and in newspapers and magazines and everywhere you look, right? And so what I mean though is that, just because a kid says, yes, I want that Cabbage Patch doll because I want to be cool, I don't want to be the one kid in my class that doesn't have it and all that kind of stuff, right? That too is something that is very, very short-lived, right? Like it's a level of impermanence that is just staggering, that we would make ourselves so stressed out about this, right? Now again, I'm not saying don't try to get your kids what they're looking for, right? If it's within your means and it's not going to cause you an amount of stress that's going to pull you away from what Christmas is all about, then yeah, go for it. But that's the point that I'm trying to make, right? As we talk about here in this podcast and on this YouTube channel very often, right? The idea of the holidays in general, the idea of any time in our lives, right, is to be able to show up for our lives and show up for our families, right? And what happens is, right, so let's say you go to the store for the Cabbage Patch doll of 2020. I have no idea what that is. We play a totally low-key game in this regard in my family, but whatever that thing is, right? You go to the store and you put all this anxiety and this pressure on yourself to get that thing, right? And either you get it and you're excited, right? Or you don't get it and you're not excited, or maybe you get it and you're excited but you spent too much money, or you had to just go through all of this to get there, right? And what this did was it caused the stress in your body, right? Now the minute that you cause the stress in your body, right, what that means is that you're no longer there to show up to life, right? And the whole time that you've been searching and grasping and trying to find this present and do it just perfect, just absolutely perfectly right, during that time you weren't showing up to your life. What you were doing was showing up to this consumerism thing that you were doing, right? But you weren't there. If at that moment, if somebody reached out to you and said, hey, I want to connect with you, for whatever reason that is, maybe you've run into an old friend on the street, maybe you get a phone call from someone who's a family member or something who you're not going to get to see this year, and they want to talk, even though you might give them the service of interacting with them, you're not really there because the stress that you're feeling in your body has driven your body into survival mode, and you're literally, it's the same thing as if you were running away from a tiger who is trying to eat you, right? Like there's no difference, right? And so you might have this little conversation with this person who you ran into or the person that you called, and when you go home that night, right, you're there, you're daddy's home, mommy's home, here we are, let's have dinner kind of thing, right? but your body is still, in all likelihood anyway, your body is still in that place of hyperarousal, right? And if you're not aware of that, then you don't even realize it's happening, right? And so you're just, maybe you're a little short with your children, or maybe you're a little short with your spouse, and what's that doing for the Christmas spirit, right? Now, and I remember this like all the time, right? Like I used to get into fights with people, my family and stuff, get into arguments every year at Christmas, right? And that's because I wasn't really there. I was off in this like gotta get it right land in my mind, right? I was not really there. I was not present with what's happening. So yesterday I posted something, and this is really the point of this podcast here, or this podcast and YouTube video today. I posted yesterday on social media. I did presence, presence, is greater than presence, presence. Right? So meaning that being there for your family, being there for yourself, being there to really enjoy this time is so much more valuable to everyone. You, your kids, your spouse, your family, everyone. So much more valuable than any toy or stuffed animal or gadget or whatever that you might be able to buy. Okay, there's been so many, scholars and poets and philosophers who have said that presence, giving someone our attention and giving someone our presence is the biggest and greatest gift we can give to anyone. Right? And that's the point here, right? That if you're going to allow yourself to get enormously stressed out and in this emotional and physical exhaustion state, right? Leading up to Christmas, then what you're doing is you're not really there, right? And so the indelible memory that's going to be imprinted in your children's, nervous system, or your spouse's nervous system, or your nervous system, which you're going to pass down that line, right? That indelible memory is going to be one of, of confusion, right? And of difficulty, right? Because the message that you're sending, right, which is the message that I received as a child, right, was that, my parents were there to provide for us in terms of material possessions, right? But they were bickering with each other the whole time, and they were bickering with us. And so it was, while it was this very positive thing about getting gadgets and getting stuff, getting loot that I could, just kind of collect and keep and have the value of this, really the enjoyment was not really there. Right? And when I look back, it feels like, and again, you can't really remember it because, some of it you'll remember. You'll have certain memories that really stand out, and those would be the ones that are really, connected to a very deep emotion, right? But overall, right, when you look back, all you feel like, for me, all I feel is pressure. When I start thinking about Christmas and my family and what, I feel pressure, right? And it is when I can let go of that pressure, when I can realize that this is coming from my nervous system that is stored these memories from my, that I can't even articulate, right? But it's stored this like sort of, emotional, physical memory in my body that when I can realize that that's the case, well, now I have something I can do about it, right? I can take a few deep breaths. I can make sure that I'm nice and calm, that I'm getting out of the stress response. That's the first priority, right? Get your body out of that stress response, right? Because in that stress response, nothing good is gonna happen, right? I promise you that, right? So first, get that, right? Get yourself calm and get yourself, to homeostasis, right? Get yourself to where your heart is beating normally, your blood pressure is where it's supposed to be, your body is functioning the way it's supposed to do. Now, there's lots of different ways that you could do that, right? You can take a nice walk, you can listen to music, you can dance. Dancing is a great way to reset the nervous system, right? Because you rev everything up and then let it calm down, But mostly what you got to do is you got to stop thinking about all all of the pressure, and you got to stop. You got to let go of all of the demands and all of the obligations and the goals that you have about what you're going to buy, right? You got to accept the fact that you might not be able to get it all right. Right? And of course, part of reducing and managing the stress is not spending more money than you have to spend, right? Like if you're in a position where it's going to take away from, paying some bills or something, then you really shouldn't do it. Right? Like that's the bottom line, and that's a hard thing to accept, but if you can accept that, that's a very, very powerful first step, right? And again, because the financial aspect of what's going on here is one of the biggest drivers of the stress response, right? So if you can, reduce that, you're going to automatically, already right away, going to be in a much better place, right? And now once you got yourself into this place of homeostasis where you're not feeling this stress and you're not reactive and you're really open to spending the time with the people who you really care about, and that's the whole point in the first place, right? The reason why we go to all these troubles is because we feel like this gift is going to make the people we love happy, right? But in fact, what's really going to make them happy is you and your presence with them, right? Not the present that you hand someone, but the presence in which you can hold someone in your heart and you can dwell within their hearts as well, right? So, and of course, this is the thing, right? Like if we're in this big stressed out place, do you think making cookies with your kids is going to happen? Do you think that, sitting down for a board game is going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. You're going to say, okay, I'm tired. I got to go take a nap. You kids play with your toys. My job is done, right? Like I've done what I need to do. So you kids go ahead and play with your toys. I'm going to take a nap, or I'm going to watch football, or I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to, like what time's dinner kind of thing, right? And so that's the thing, right? So the job is not to just provide these presents. The job is to connect with those around us, right? Especially when you're talking about little children, right? And yeah, I mean, there's an adjustment that has to be made. I mean, kids will, they will be temporarily and impermanently upset if they don't get the things that are on their list. But you know what? That's not something they're going to remember when they're 20 and 30 years old and have a family of their own, right? That is not the thing that is passed down in their nervous system, right? That is, in the same way that the abundance of something, physical and tangible, right? The phone or the computer or the video game, whatever it is, in as much as that excitement of that thing is impermanent, well, so is the absence of that thing, the scarcity of that thing is going to be impermanent as well, right? Your kids are not going to remember that they didn't get that video game that they really wanted. What they're going to remember is how they felt, right? And if you can connect to the heart of your children and the heart of your spouse and the heart of the people around you, then that is the enduring memory that will be imprinted on their nervous system, right? And so again, the only way to do that is to be without stress and without emotional reactivity, right? Because again, yes, I mean, nothing is permanent. Even the thing in your nervous system, that's not permanent, but that is as close to permanent as it gets, right? Because that is an enduring, living thing that gets passed from generation to generation to generation to generation. So just like, I walk out of my house in the morning and I see the Rocky Mountains over there, and even those are not permanent, right? There is nothing permanent, but there's a lot more permanent is this feeling in the nervous system that you'll pass on to your children by giving them your presence, right? That is a lot closer to permanent than an Xbox or something like that, right? All right, I hope this was helpful for you. And if you're having trouble with this and you're really feeling like, okay, yeah, Art, I hear what you're saying, I'm feeling this, and I don't know what the F to do about it, right? Well, then what you do is you get in touch with me, okay? No charge, okay? This is not me trying to sell you. Yes, I would love to coach you. If you feel like you need coaching, I would love to do that. That's, how I pay my bills and everything like that. Sure, I'll be very transparent about that. But I'm I will never, ever, ever, and I have a long list of people who I've helped who will tell you that I will never, ever, ever turn someone away just because of a financial exchange that's not happening. Okay, so if you're in trouble and it doesn't have to even be trouble like you're worried about something big happening, but if you're feeling this level of stress and you don't feel like you can, based on what I'm saying here and all the other videos I'm making, if you don't feel like you can really show up, then get a hold of me. Okay, let me help you. Okay, I can give you some very, very simple practices that can help right away. Okay, and then I can maybe give you some things to think about further than what I've talked about here. They can get you kind of, wrapping your mind around a different sort of, paradigm for Christmas, if you will. All right, so please reach out if you need me. Okay, if not, I wish you well. I'm going to do one more episode tomorrow, and then I'm going to take a little break, all right, for a few days. And so I wish you well, and thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and yeah, I'm here if you need me, okay, everybody? But remember, presence is greater than presents. In other words, presence is greater than gifts. Just try to remember that in the next couple days, okay? Just even that alone is going to help. I can take some of that pressure off me. All right. Thanks for listening. I wish you well. Take care.